Recording live from the Capri Camper mobile podcast studio and community development center. This is the Small Truck Campers podcast, episode 27. Thank you so much for joining me. We have a great episode lined up, so why don't you grab your favorite campfire beverage and let's hit the road. Wow, episode 27, first episode of 2025. And I was just reflecting on 2024 and just what a great year it was for the community, for all of the different little subsets of small truck campers we have, whether it's the YouTube page, the Instagram, the Facebook group, the website, the podcast, and just meeting people out there. It was just such a great year. So I'm just going to recap real quick some of the podcasts we got to do in 2024 and some events that made 2024 so great. And then we will dive into 2025 and the first podcast of 2025. So, 2024, what an awesome year for the podcast, for the community. We grew in so many ways, and it was all thanks to you guys out there sharing the stories, sharing the podcast on your Facebooks and Instagrams, tagging me on Instagram, posting my stuff to your story. We really grew the community in such a big way. And it started with our first podcast episode out in January. Chris Clemens from Tarzan Camps with Turk, and talking about the Dalton Highway, how he was trapped in Thailand during COVID, what his definition of success was. We did our first of 2 in-person podcasts with Stan Kennedy from 4-Wheel Campers. He's a legend in the forums and just has so much knowledge about the history of some California-made campers like Six Pack and 4-Wheel Campers and where they're going. We had episode 15, Rebecca Waters, who lived out of her camper and teaches like wellness and tools for anxieties. We had episode 16, David Hampton. We talked about all things insurance. So if you're ever wondering about insurance for your camper, insurance for your vehicle, your RV, whatever, listen to episode 16. We dive into so much stuff. Episode 17, we got to talk to a couple taking it slow to South America at Just Travel In, who were on their way in South America. I forget. I think they were on the Pan American Highway. I forget. We got to welcome Tune Outdoors, Hiatus Campers, Toyota World Runners. We talked to Josh Martin, who made the Cream Puff camper. And we talked to All Abilities Overland, who lives in her truck camper she was thrashed by a bull when she was growing up and lost the ability to walk. And just talking to Channing about her ability to, work in her camper and be in her camper and use it to get out there and meet and inspire others was just such a good conversation. Chef Adam Glick was a great podcast that I'm just so stoked. I got to talk to him. I've looked up to him since his days on Below Deck, and with his book and his outdoor lifestyle, it just made total sense. And I'm so happy we got to connect on that podcast. We hit our second of in-person podcasts with Capri Campers, Tyson and Pete, the owners of Capri Campers, and just talking to them and getting their side of the story. They're such great people, and they helped this community grow so much this year. I cannot thank them enough for their graciousness and their just support of this whole community. It's been nothing but a positive relationship, and I'm really hoping we can keep it going. We also got to talk to Topo Toppers there at the end of the year, and also our buddy Sam Jett, who made a Radica-style camper on his Rivian, which was just a really cool concept. We talked a lot about some hacks if you're camping an electric vehicle. That was really cool. But yeah, 2024, we got to do some great podcast episodes. I got to do 2 in person, 1 at 4-Wheel, and then I got to fly out to Capri headquarters in Texas, do an in-person podcast, pick up the beautiful camper I'm in now, which is where I'm recording all these podcasts from. It's just been the perfect platform for this podcast and just to grow the community and serve as a home base. And I couldn't be more thankful for Tyson and Pete out at Capri Campers. They make some of the best small truck campers and all truck campers, and they're really big in the rodeo scene, which is really cool to get that side of things, which is the side of things I'm not really exposed to, but just the whole rodeo side and how much success they've had in rodeo. They just had the bull riding, or I forget. I'm not a cowboy, but they had their the big championships out in Vegas, and I think the majority of the top place finishers were all in Capri Campers. So just that footprint and that flag in the ground of authenticity is just something you can't buy, and it's so cool that they are just living it and they have such a following. And like I said, I'm in the Capri camper right now. It's just so beautiful to look around. It's insulated. It's cold outside, but it's nice and warm in here. I had the Olympia Wave 3 heater going earlier, and I just bought a inverter for it so I can truly do mobile podcasting now without my Jackery device. I can just plug into the house battery here, and it fits so good on the back of my truck. It's like my truck doesn't even know it's there, and it's stylish. The quilted aluminum siding is just so vintage and so classic, but looks so cool. Truly stoked to be rocking this camper right now. And what a great experience that was going out there. I remember making the decision, should I go out to Texas and see what this is all about? And my buddy at work is, hey, if you want to take this podcast and the community to the next level, you have to go. And it turned out to be quite the adventure going out there, picking up the camper, shipping my truck out, flying out there, Ubering out to Bluffdale, Texas, which isn't the easiest spot to get to, picking up the camper, talking to those guys, touring the factory, just having a great time. Headed west from there, had a breakdown on my trusty 97 F250 Power Stroke just outside of El Paso, a little town called Las Cruces. And as luck would have it, I broke down within 2 miles of a shop that specialized in 7.3 Power Stroke diesel engines, which is so crazy that even happened. I still can't believe it. My AAA towing radius was 5 miles, and I think as a crow flies, it was 2 miles away, but on the tow truck, I think we got there at 3.9 miles. It was something so ridiculous. And those guys, it was so hard to leave the truck and the camper with essentially strangers in a town that I had no knowledge of, and I didn't know anybody there. But I left it with Black Diamond Diesel Performance, and those guys took care of me. They kept the rig in a barbed wire lot all night when it wasn't being worked on. And we never really found the issue, but what we did find was some metal in the fuel filter, which I'm thinking clogged up the fuel filter inlet valve, which caused the engine to shut down. And I'm thinking in my preventative maintenance spree before this cross-country trip, I did change the fuel filter. And I'm wondering if when the hood was open and the old fuel filter was off, if particles from the hood of the truck found their way into the fuel bowl. I don't really know. It's a mystery. We did some other preventative maintenance, and while they were in there, they found a few turbo leaks and just classic stuff with old cars with old seals and old boots, etc. But those guys hooked it up and was able to make the journey from Las Cruces up here to Santa Cruz without any problem. So props and shout out to those guys. But 2024 was just such an incredible year of growth for the community, and to top it all off, we had our rig roundup at the beginning of November, which was just such an amazing event. I still can't believe how much fun it was, how great it was, how many people we got to meet. It worked out better with the location and being able to surf and hang out all day at the beach, go up to the mountains and camp under the stars. And we are already planning 2025's rig roundup. So if that's even remotely on your calendar, make sure you mark it. It's the easiest weekend to remember. It's the weekend where we lose an hour of daylight in November. And we're looking forward to making that just quite the experience and build on last year's and still keep it small in roots. But I'm really excited for where the rig roundup could be in a few years in terms of who could come out. Hopefully we can do it 3 days, hopefully have music, hopefully have workshops, maybe team up with some mountain bike companies, get some demo bikes, and just make it a whole event. It's a long ways off, but it's on my radar, and I'm really excited to work on that when the time comes. But other than that, for 2025, I'm looking forward to some great podcast guests. I already have a few lined up, and this year, I really do want to focus on the podcast. 2024 was really about building out the website and that whole component of it where you can buy and sell campers online and getting my merchandise supply chain totally down in terms of what's working for that. Really looking forward to charging hard with the podcast this year. I met so many people at the roundup that said they'd put on the podcast and start cranking away at their project, or they put on the podcast and on a road trip to get inspired. And there's so many stories to be told in this sector and in this community that we're a part of. And I just want to share those stories and keep building out the community that way and inspire others. So obviously we'll keep the Instagram going. That's the easiest way to get from me to you guys. It's the most direct way, but the podcast is what I want to focus on this year, and just continuing to build out those relationships that we've been able to foster. And I say we, it's really just me, but we sounds cooler. I think I read something online the other day that said, if you say we instead of I, it's more motivating for everybody. So it is just me here. However, there's more to it than just me behind the scenes. There's a couple people help me with the Instagram, and my wife helps me with a lot of the stuff too. So I guess that's the we. But yeah, we are just looking forward to sharing stories this year and really working on the podcast component of it and continue building out those relationships and those partnerships. But I just want to keep fostering relationships like that. I have the Sea Otter Classic lined up in April. I'll be there racing, but also being there as a Small Truck Campers representative. So if anyone's going to be at the Sea Otter, let me know. I'm making some jerseys. If you entered, let me know. We can try to get you on the unofficial Small Truck Campers team. We have some surf contests lined up this summer where I'll be attending and participating in. And then I was going to hit Descend on Bend this year, 2024. It just got so busy with a newborn. I switched jobs. It was just not happening. But I didn't ask them for a refund. I asked them for a credit so I can go to a future event. And I'm really hoping to make it out to Descend on Bend in 2025. And that was lead us straight into the rig roundup. So event-wise, that's what we're looking at for this year, 2025. Podcast guest-wise, man, I got some really cool names. I'm so excited to be presenting them. I don't want to give them away just yet because A, I don't want to jinx it, but the podcast guests are a little bit tricky to pin down your free time and their free time. But I'm excited to be presenting. And this podcast guest is no different. So that's the plan for 2025. Thanks so much for sticking around. Thanks so much for promoting. Thanks so much for helping build out the community. And I'm so excited to see where we go in 2025, who we get to meet, what ideas we get to come up with, hopefully some new funny bumper stickers down the pipeline. So stay tuned to that. And we'll keep delivering great content that keeps you motivated and excited and builds out community, shares inspiration, and encourages others. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome our first guest of 2025 on the podcast. I got recently talking to Brandon Tyler of Peak Performance Campers. I knew that this was something a little different, so I wanted to get him on the podcast and get his philosophy behind his builds and his campers, his approach to modularity, his approach to composite materials to make these awesome campers. And I think it's going to be a great way to kick off 2025. So without any further ado, please welcome Brandon Tyler from Peak Performance Campers. I have Brandon right now. He's calling just outside Dallas, and he is the owner, creator, and the brains behind Peak Performance Campers. We're going to dive into what all that's about, his humble beginnings, where they're at now, where they're going. And I'm just so thrilled to be bringing up a new podcast episode. Brandon, thanks so much for joining me, making some time on this Sunday morning, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So let's just start out real quick. You're calling, it looks like, from one of your campers. Why don't you just give me the quick nutshell version of what Peak Performance Campers is all about, and then we'll dive into kind of how it all got started.
Well, I appreciate that, Spencer. So yeah, I'm in one of our new campers. We have been in business for about 4 years, and I started with a vision where I wanted to build modular slide-ins. I grew up camping. I've been in the outdoors forever. I was a climbing guide in college. I worked at Orvis. I've been in the outdoor industry forever. When I met my wife and we were dating, I was looking for a camper myself, and we were looking at truck campers, really whatever, and I just felt like I couldn't find the layout that I wanted because I'm a multi-sport guy, right? I climb in the winter, I hunt in the fall, the spring. I usually do a lot of various trips, maybe ski, and in the summer I'm all over the place. So there's having a camper where the layout just is fixed, I just didn't feel like I could spend that kind of money and go buy something that is, like I said, a fixed layout. And so I thought of an idea. Why don't we create a truck camper? Because I really like truck campers because I love Tacomas. I like the idea of having everything self-contained. And I was like, why don't we make a truck camper where you can actually change the layouts? Everything's cubed up. It's all we call modules, which are just self-contained units that have sinks, stoves, whatever. And I thought that'd be a really great idea for people who maybe don't want to go buy the Earth Roamer or go buy those giant adventure vehicles, but want something that can really suit their needs for not just their life, but each individual trip. And that's how I hatched that idea back in 2021. And it's grown, and I couldn't be happier.
That's a really interesting take on the whole thing, because that is a conundrum of, do I want the enclosed slide-in that's built out, and then I'm dedicating my whole truck bed space to that one rig as if it's an RV? Or do I want to go the minimalist route with maybe a rooftop tent, like a wedge-style bed rail camper, but then I'm risking like some luxuries, like just an enclosed space that's dust-free and more soundproof and more insulating?
Mhm.
And most people would settle. So it's interesting to hear you actually, I want both, and here's how I'm going to do it. So that's awesome. Let's talk about where'd you grow up, and you said you got into camping at an early age. So what did that look like?
And so I grew up actually here. I grew up in what we call Grapevine, Texas. If you're familiar, it's right outside of Dallas, right by the DFW airport. Grew up here my whole life. And my outdoor journey really started probably climbing, right? I grew up, I think every weekend my parents would take, we had a little, not Coleman, Starcraft pop up, like the slide, pull behind, not the slide in. And that thing was amazing. It was a little tiny, it weighed like 2,000 pounds. It opened up, you could sleep like 8 people. We had a big family. I'm the oldest of four. And every weekend we'd spend at the lake, camping or whatever. It really wasn't doing anything crazy, but it was just awesome. It was such a good family bonding event, right? Just getting away from your house and getting outside. I truly believe just being in nature is curing. It's you can't beat it. Whether you stay in a camper or not doesn't really matter. But the idea of just being outside and just being in nature, I can't. If you know it, it's an amazing feeling. Growing up, I was awesome just being out there, and so that's where I really just got this hunger for now. When I grew up and got on my own and got a wife, I want to keep that going. Right? I just can't go a whole year without going out in the mountains or going out in the wilderness and whatever it is. But it lit that fire as a young age, and once you have that bug, you just can't. You just can't. I don't know. You just can't shake it. And I'd say I'm more of a climber than anything, right? Like growing up, I'd climb and in the Wichitas, then I became a climbing guide in college. I just love being on the rocks. I'm weird, right? I like that fear, like putting myself in situations with fear and just seeing how I handle them and constantly testing myself. And I don't know, I just really built this outdoor lifestyle and now I can't shake it.
Yeah, incredible. And I can totally relate. I actually just walked down to the coastline here and was watching the sea wash up on the beach and just looking forward to
Hmm.
hanging out with my son and my wife, disconnected, waking up, having coffee in
Yeah,
nature, and just that earthy connection you get. It's so hard to beat. I don't know how people go through life not camping or something.
I know.
So you obviously carry that passion of outdoors and climbing and adventure with you. And where'd you go to college where you were able to be a climbing guide as well?
So I went to North Texas, which is UNT. It's located in Denton, Texas. It's about probably an hour from the Oklahoma border. So we weren't right next to really climbing areas. Main place would be like Mineral Wells, which is a small little canyon that we'd go climb at. But climbing in the Wichita Mountains, that's where I mostly guided out of, and I love that area. And it's not as trafficked as most places. It's a Bureau of Land Management. It's a wildlife refuge. And then I go down to Austin too. I wasn't really next to the rocks, but there was a community of climbers at UNT. It was a smaller commuter college, but that's where I met like my best friend and roommate. We'd climb together. He's a really good climber. And yeah, I was just able to travel 3 hours, 3 hours. When you live in Texas, an area that's close is like an hour, right? If you're living in California, an hour takes you to the beach or the mountains. In Texas, that takes you to like
Yeah.
the grocery store. So it's 3 hours to me is like nothing. To you in California, maybe that's a haul to
Yeah.
get to the mountain. I don't know.
Yeah, I was driving through Texas this summer, going out to Capri, which is, if I had known you were there, I would have stopped by and said hi. And I just remember driving on these little like SR like 52 highway
Yep.
road thingies,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, dude, I've been driving for 3 hours, like you just said.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've maybe passed like a small grocery store and like a gas
Mm-hmm.
station. I'm like, what
Yeah.
the heck? Like, where's like, how do you get anywhere? So that
Mm-hmm.
totally makes sense. Granted, I was off the interstate, kind of in the back country, but yeah, it's Texas, and that's great. As you're doing these adventure expeditions in college, what kind of rig are you using? Because climbing and camping obviously go hand in hand, but I'd say climbing and like dirt bagging it or vagabonding it in whatever vehicle you have is even more hand in hand. So, what were you like living out of or using to get to these mountains at this time in your life?
That's a great question. So I'll actually post this on my Instagram and to show people, but I had a Nissan Xterra, a 2005 standard Nissan Xterra. The first year they made the Gen 2. And I put it I like scraped money together, put it on like an old man emu because the suspension was shot. We bought it with 130,000 miles for $5,000. The window was cracked, the paint was whatever, but it was a machine, man. And it's all polymer in the back, and the seats lay down flat. I would literally pull up to the side. I'd have all my stuff pushed to the left, the right on the passenger side, and then I had my little mat, and then I had bag nets everywhere. I made all these bungees, and I made a little camper. I had a little stove. I'd crack the window and cook in there. I beat the heck out of that thing, man, but I loved it. It was an awesome little truck, those little Nissan Xterras, and now my brother has it in Bozeman with 200 and something thousand miles on it and still running. And that was an amazing truck. So I didn't have like a pickup truck, but I love the little SUVs, like the little Japanese SUVs. I love those things. So I had an Xterra.
Yeah, and they had the little cubby on top on the roof, right? Like over the driver's seat.
Yes,
Did
yeah.
yours
I
have
actually
that?
ripped that. I ripped that out and welded a little rack for jerry cans, and
Oh,
put that up
nice.
there. Yeah,
Yeah, they're definitely underrated maybe, but those things can
yeah.
perform. I've seen some pretty built out
Oh
ones and not even built out ones that handle some pretty crazy trails.
yeah.
So this is all during college, and when did you end up graduating?
Graduated in 2019.
Okay, somewhat fairly recently. And then talk to me about the transition after college and what that looked like for you.
So after I graduated college, I had a job lined up with IBM to sell software. And because I went to school for data science and analytics, and I was super in love with it. I loved it. And I had a job lined up with IBM and start in the beginning of 2020, right before COVID. And so I had 8 months where I had to figure out how to make some money because like I didn't really have any money. I wasn't really working in college. And so I found a job at Orvis. So I started working at Orvis, and best decision I ever made, the best people ever. Brett Delk
That's the
was
fly fishing company?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Great dudes. I learned so much. Brett Delk, Rick Hader, like all those guys that work at the South Lake Orvis are just awesome. And yeah, I just couldn't I don't know. It was an amazing experience. I learned how to like properly cast. I got to get outfitted. We got a great pro discount. I think all the money that I made I just spent on fly fishing gear. So like I really just went back to zero. So but it was awesome, man. I had a great time. Like I was bumming it, man. I didn't have any money. I was just like fishing, and anytime I wasn't working, I was just fishing, and that's pretty much it, man. I was just outside all the time and just waiting to get paid I remember going to the bank and trying to get $1,000 loan, and they were like, "Get lost," because I had no money. I was like, "I need money to pay rent for December." I was like, "Hey, I'm getting a job where I get paid X, Y, and Z." They were like, "No, no." I'm like, "Please, I don't know." So I just had to put it on a credit card and pay it off. But yeah, I always think that's so funny because then a year later I got approved for a $400,000 mortgage. I'm like, what is this? I don't know, but yeah, that was
Yeah.
the 8 months between graduation and getting my first job. I was working at Orvis, bumming it.
Awesome. I'm sure you learned a lot about like brand management and just like
Oh
company
yeah,
culture and
yeah,
some of those like
amazing
intrinsic
brand.
skills that yeah, you can't learn like in school or even at like corporate America. Those are the things that really set people apart. So that's great exposure. And then let's talk about at this point in your life so you end up going to IBM?
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
January.
And how long were you there for?
I left about a year ago, so 3+ years, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 3 years, and that might have been one of the best experiences I ever had in my life. It's just
Working for IBM?
their sales program is top notch.
Hmm.
They treat their employees really well, and they don't overwork you, and they respect you. And it's just the culture like is it's a lot more laid back than some other tech companies. They're older, and maybe it's if you're really gonna get into software, that might be like not the place to start. But it's I mean their sales program is next to none, and that's where I learned the idea about like branding and like value selling. Because growing up, you think everything's a coupon code. That's how you sell, and that's just not the case, right? Like you want to build a brand image. And I actually learned that at IBM. I learned that at Orvis too, but at scale, I learned that at IBM because IBM's huge, and
Hmm.
just the idea of being a consultative seller and everything. I just learned so much at IBM.
Those sales programs, yeah, you do learn a lot. They
Mhm.
are like micro college degrees.
It is.
And I've had a few experiences with some different programs, and I still implement those things just daily. Again, what an unlikely path, but what a great path so far.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the inspiration for your first truck camper. Obviously, you were in the pop-up trailer growing up, and then you were in the Xterra for a while. At what point did your mind bridge the gap between SUV into truck camper, or like trailer tow behind into truck camper?
Oh,
How did it all start?
that's a great question. Yeah, I was always, when I had the Xterra, I was always thinking, oh, I want a trailer. This means you can't put a truck camper on there. I never really wanted a rooftop tent. I wanted to walk around in it. And then I ended up getting my Tacoma. My Xterra broke down, and then I had problems, so I gave it to my brother and got a Tacoma about early 2020. And I had always had this idea as a kid to build a trailer. I never had the modularity idea. But I grew up with one. I was like, oh man, I'm going to build one. I was always looking at those little build your own trailers from Lowe's. Like I was like, I'll put plywood on there and I'll build this little shell. And I was trying to get my parents to give me money and I'm gonna travel the world in this, and it just didn't work out. Whatever, I was silly, but um, about a year working into IBM, man, I really want a camper, and I just couldn't. Like I said, I couldn't find one. I was like, dude, why don't I just build one? Like, all right, so I bought a welder and welded the aluminum. So I'll back this up. Originally, I was gonna build with like stick and tin four-wheel campers. I was gonna weld like the frame and everything. I have the drawings still. I had all this. I sketched it out, and I had all these drawings, and I was gonna build like a with stick and tin. And then I watched this YouTube channel called Ambition Strikes. And to this
Yep.
day, like I want to meet that guy and just give him a hug and be like, "You changed my life. Like you have no idea." Because I thought the composite panel structure, and we can get into this later if this is getting off the rails, but composite panel structure was dumb. Like I was like, you're gonna glue those panels together and it's gonna be a camper? I'm like, no, we're gonna weld this aluminum together and everything. And I had all the drawings and I watched this, like, this is pretty sweet. So then I started sketching it out, bought a welder, and then for 9 months in my parents' garage, and I half of it. I don't know where you want to take this, but do you want me to start with how I built my first one?
Yeah, that
Okay,
sounds good.
okay. So I wanted that truck camper, so I started sketching it out, and I had a 900 square foot apartment, and I didn't know CAD, so I had a graph paper and notebook paper, and the entire first camper was never CADed. It was built on hand drawings, every measurement, everything like that. And I actually have and I'm gonna put all these pictures out there. I have like blue duct tape where I was gonna mark all the slats for the subframe and everything. Then I learned how to make those panels from Ambition Strikes, like the composite panels. I bought XPS from Home Depot, bought Phylon from a supplier in Vermont, and I actually glued them in my apartment. And while I was working, I was like on a rolly chair because you have to roll it around. And I had an old door, and I put it on top to evenly smash all the glue, and rolling around. And while I was working in my lap, and just if I had that video, I wish I had video of it. I probably like someone would have put me in an asylum. Like it was bad. And then I stacked all the panels behind the TV, drove my wife crazy. We did not get our deposit back. That place was ruined. And I would take them out one by one in my truck and take them to my parents where I was welding the frame. I learned how to weld, and I welded the frame for the first, because the first one we actually like welded everything together and then glued the panels in. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea. I was putting them all together and I was like, this is pretty cool and whatnot. And it just turned out after 9 months, it was pretty sweet. I was like, this is really cool. And it came together. And then I started building some of those little modules and I was like, oh, dude, this is really cool. This is the idea that I had. Like, why don't we take this, produce this? And I had no social media experience and everything. So I was posting videos of badly framed, be like, this is cool camper, buy camper. And that's how that first iteration was built. But it was just like, I'm a, I don't know, impulsive person, but like I'm thoughtful, but when I think something, I act on it. The thought process was not very thought out in the beginning. I just was like, I want a camper, I build camper. So that's how that worked out.
Ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
But it's that ambition or that like spontaneity that really is a common thread in recent camper manufacturers, it's I'm just gonna go get a welder and figure it out. That's how Micah from Overland Under Budget started it. That's how a lot of these camper companies started. Is just I'm looking on Craigslist, I'm not seeing anything. I don't want a brand new camper trailer thing. Yeah, I'm just gonna go grab a welder and see what happens. And it's funny because that's just how it starts. And then you look at these people like, wow, look at this awesome company, and you think they must have a background in manufacturing. They must have gone to college for welding.
Yeah.
Nope, they're just like,
Nope.
I'm gonna get a welder and start in my apartment. So funny. Someone sent me photos of their camper they were building, and they moved all the furniture out of their kitchen, and they were building it in their kitchen. And I'm like, yes, that's so cool. So
Stories like that, man.
the human spirit is still alive. So talk to me about, at this point, you're working at IBM still, and now you have the first gen camper completed.
Yeah.
What most people would just like put the tools down, shake their hands in the dust, and be like, that's my camper, I'm gonna go run with it.
Yeah.
What prompted you to turn this and pivot from a promising career in software sales into the unknown and think maybe there's a future in manufacturing campers out of my 900 square foot apartment?
Man, that's a great question. It's weird because, like I said, I just attack. So I think mostly what it was is, and I'm thinking back to this. I'm like, I really didn't think a lot of things through. I just acted. But I think what it really was is when I had that first gen, my eyes lit up with the possibility. And when I showed people, it wasn't very high quality because I had limited materials, and like it was my first one. And it still lasts to this day. I renovated it with a lot of our newer materials, but people would see it and be like, this is awesome. I want one of these. And I'm like, dude, can I do this? And then I thought of all the possibilities. I'm like, there's not something like this. There's a lot of truck camper. People would tell me like, they'd see it and they'd be like, oh, it's just another four-wheel camper. And they'd hop in and be like, whoa, it's empty. There's space. Like I can put stuff wherever I want. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, that's awesome. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. That was the thought process. Didn't think, do I have the funding? Do I have the money? Do I have it? None of that was thought through. It was just like, I want to build camper. I build a camper. I want to build camper at scale. I build camper at scale. Like it was, my wife is an amazing woman to put up with me because I am like taking off with this. I'm like, let's go. Let's get it done. We're going to build it. And so then I started designing the Gen 2s, and that took forever. That took a year to figure out like a lot of the stuff, because I think back now, like the problems I thought were problems when I was starting out. Oh man, how am I going to make an exterior extrusion? Now I'm like, I just go get exterior extrusion. It's amazing. Like when you just do something and not worry about stuff, as long as you're ambitious and you are focused and you're driven, you can get it done. And I just figured out all this stuff, and yeah, I don't know. That was the thought process.
I love it. You just had to do it, so you had to do it.
Yeah.
So from those first few campers, you said it looked similar to other campers on the outside, but people hopped inside, and it was a totally different experience. What set you apart from the get-go? What was different? Was it the composite panel? Was it the modularity aspect? Did that all come later? Or what was the initial kind of light bulb that went off when people would hop in your camper and see it for their own eyes?
That's a great question, because it's probably two things. It's the composite panels at that time. Now composite panels are blown up. Back when I started with composite panels, it was very, I don't want to say rare, but it was not as, and I knew it was going to be the trend. But at the time, it was the composite panels. It was also the fact that it just took a couple guys to lift it in the truck bed. That blew people's mind, that a slide-in that slept like 6 people, they're like, whoa, like I can just lift this. Like if my brother needs to get under, I can just push up on the bed and he can get under it, like with one arm. Like it's amazing how light it is. You obviously load it down with some batteries and water. I wouldn't recommend that. But the other thing was the modularity, the idea of, again, I think this comes to my brain, is I'm also very stubborn. So if someone tells me like, oh, the battery has to go over there and the sink, I'm like, no, I put it wherever I want. And so that, I think, blew people's mind. It's like, you can just move the sink and stove and everything. I'm like, yeah, it's all self-contained. Because I was also very obsessed with space shuttles and stuff like that. If you watch, they don't waste any space, and everything is modularized. Boom, boom. Because they send everything up in shipments. And so they don't pay the astronauts to stock shelves like they're at Kroger. Everything's crated and slides into spot FE or spot 6D. So I was like, why don't we just apply that concept where we don't waste wall space and you can attach things for each mission, if you want to call it that. So that was the idea.
Love that. That is so cool. NASA inspired modularity, taking you to whatever mission you need to be on. And that's the conundrum is, do I use my truck, as I mentioned earlier, as a dedicated camper to the point where it's essentially an RV in terms of footprint
Yeah.
in my driveway? Or if I'm going to pick up lumber from Home Depot or something, like going to drop the camper and put the truck bed back together. Or like you said, if you're going hunting, you're going to have different stocks than if you're going rock climbing for the weekend.
Yeah.
So talk to me about those first few campers and where you're at now in terms of like production, facility, fulfillment, lead time, etc. And then I want to dive into the concept of modularity and how that is implemented in your design.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's great. Then took that, we built a first batch. Well, we built initially our first Gen 2 and sold that one to someone actually in Sacramento. And great guy, and took a chance on like a new company, and he loves it. I remember we delivered it, and because it was funny, he sent me like a check in the mail without even like meeting me, and I'm like, and I remember holding this check, I'm like, holy crap, like this is real. And I like have it mounted on my wall like a dork, and I have it up on the wall. But anyway, I I then built it, and it took a long time. I felt bad because it was like we were building something new, but we took it to him. He's like, man, I've been waiting for this forever. He got in. I'm like, he's like, holy, I thought this was just a shell. I'm like, no, like this is a platform. And he's, oh, this is great. And so it's funny. Our first customer wasn't even sold on the modularity. They just thought they were buying a generic rail topper shell.
Wow.
And that we were like, okay, we're good to go. And so then we built a batch of 2 with our production. Like we basically bought like production sets. Like you buy like prototypes of the production sets before they go in like the long run. So you don't have like stocks of stuff that doesn't work. And we built 2, sold one of those. And then we have this one right here. And we actually sold that one to like an ultra marathon legend, but we took those to Overland Expo. And we sold that big one to Jeff Browning in Arizona, and he loves it. And but anyway, we just wanted to test pilot that stuff, and people love it. And we're like, okay, now that takes us to now. We're trying to find a facility. We're trying to get our like runs ready to go, like our quantities and everything. And that's been a sleepless nights because I'm learning that stuff as we go. Like the people we work with are really a lot smarter than me. I just am happy to be around them. And that's where we're trying to go. We're trying to build up this process. And we're also trying to add dealers and upfitters because our product is so modular that really we can just show you a shell and it's all the same shell. We have different sizes, but a dealer could have a shell and he could have a bunch of modules. And when a customer comes in, he can say, hey, you want to see kitchen left with a dinette and a bunk? And then they can hook it in. They'll like be like, I don't really like that. Okay. And with one camper, you don't need like a fleet of all these built out campers. And so that's where we're at. That's what we do with this one right now. So as we take orders, we show them this one. We're like, oh, you want to see something different? We don't need multiple campers on the floor. Yeah, that's where we're at. Is how big of a space do we need? What do we? Because this is new. Our model is very different, right? Like I said, we don't have fixed layout stock. So it's a challenge to figure that stuff out. But that's where we're at.
Yeah, big time. It's a huge challenge, but it's exciting and definitely pursuing something you believe in. So that's really cool. In terms of like sales and lead time, are you guys, you said you want to go the dealer route or try to find some partnerships to deal with. Has word of mouth and Instagram and like social media, has that been a huge help in getting peak performance campers out there? Or how do you think people are learning about it right now?
Yeah, a lot of it's word of mouth. Jeff Browning is one of our athlete ambassadors, so like we're a brand that's obviously for everyone, but we have a focus on like high performance athletes because our gear is very versatile and everything's insulated and it's high performance. You can't break these things. So we're really trying to hone in on getting some athlete or ambassadors in the outdoor industry. I'm a huge fan because I came from Orvis, right? We had a bunch of athletes with Orvis. REI has Black Diamond. They all have athletes. And I'm like, that's the brand I want to be. Is like I want to be like an outdoor athlete focused. And so that's really where we're getting a lot of our traction. Is we gave this out to a big ultra marathoner, and he's shown people what you can do with it, and he loves it. And we're also just organic in the sense of this is who we are, and it's a new product, and it's unique. And I think people like gravitate towards that. Like there's a lot of people that are really just stoked on it. They're like, whoa, I love the modularity. But yeah, that's been our avenue of growing. And, we're trying to grow even more, go to expos. But the dealers I want to run this program with is so that they can really sit down with a customer and like figure out what they need, right? Because if I or my team were to just do that, it might not be able to service everyone in the US or the world that possibly could benefit from these campers. So that's why we're looking at the upfitter dealer route.
Got it. Yeah, makes total sense. Getting the word out there and getting some hands on the product physically. As you're in the early stages here of this new endeavor, are you looking to take on funding, or are you self-funded, or how are you funding these first few production models to be able to send off to dealers, to be able to send out to ambassadors?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am self-funded. I always like to tell people I'm sitting in my retirement account right now.
There you go.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we're looking to take on funding right now. Actually, we're trying to go get funding. We were exploring the investor route, but only if I can retain control of the vision, because like I said, this is a business focused on its customers who, like, we really want to ensure quality. I don't want anyone telling me, hey, you should cut corners here and whatever, because that's not my focus. Like, my focus is to build the highest quality stuff I can. So we are looking at that, but sometimes investors want to get in with cost cutting and stuff like that, and I'm not about that. So we're looking at loans and things like that. And right now, that's I think where we're going. We're also taking if someone pays cash, we also do free delivery. So like we try and help them out there. Like I will deliver your camper to Maine myself. Like I one time was Red Bull infused. I delivered that to Sacramento.
Oh, you drove all the
Delivered
way
it to
out from
Flagstaff.
Texas?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's another competitive advantage.
Yeah.
You can select delivery, please, and Brandon here will drive out his Tacoma from Central Texas to
the middle of
I guess you are right in the center. Anywhere is only about
18
hours away.
Reason why that's even capable is it's so easy to load these things, and they're universal, so it's not terribly difficult. And I like to train people on how to take it on and off and stuff. But yeah, either me or someone on our team. Like I'm not gonna, if I'm getting ready for Overland Expo, I'm not gonna risk a car crash and destroying your camper if I don't think I can make it out there. But yeah.
Awesome. So in terms of modularity, someone can essentially order the shell, we'll call it. And do you guys sell the components that you drag and drop in there? Or how does that work, that whole modularity? Because that's a new concept. So let's explain to our listeners a little bit more about how they actually attach, what modules you can get, how heavy are they, the construction. I want to paint the picture for that.
Well, that's a great question. If people are familiar with slide-in truck campers, you have two benches, right? And they vary in length by manufacturer, but ours are a spec length. They're a little longer, so the T is a little narrower than most campers. That aids in the universality of the camper, but also it allows us to mount the modules. And these modules are what we call like self-contained utilities. They have water tanks in them. You imagine they're like an 80-20 structure, a quick frame, and everything's componentized in them, and it has a wiring harness, and it clicks in and whatnot, right? So if you think of like the Milwaukee pack-out system, I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but the toolbox where it clicks, and then you pull out and whatnot, the batteries on drills, all that concept of just clicking in place and working, that's the idea behind our modularity. So everything is self-contained in its little quick frame, and it gets mounted on those benches, so that if you imagine if a bench had those modules, you would have a countertop and fridge and all your standard utilities. It would look essentially like any other camper in the sense that it's got your fridge and your kitchen, but you could remove it, you could change it, and you can add it. And if the weights on those vary by the component, we have storage modules that are 20 pounds. We have battery modules that are up to 120 pounds. That's how I broke my foot. dropped one on my foot. So right now I'm in a boot. I had surgery a week ago. So yeah, it can vary because batteries are pretty much your heaviest component in your camper. That or if you have 50 gallons of water. But yeah, and then we make all those modules. But also, we allow customers to design their own modules. So Jeff designed all his modules. So like we do custom, but we do custom modular. We take your if you want, or you can use our modules that we have on stock. But we take your requirements and we can custom design the modules, but we put them in our units because like each bench has what we call units. And basically that just allows, if you have a kitchen already there, we know whatever module you pull out next to it will fit. So it's a great tool that you can customize, but we put it in our standardized system, and man, it works really well because then what you could do is you could buy the shell. You could say, hey, Brandon, I want your kitchen module to the left, and I want your fridge module right there. I want a dinette. That's how I want it mounted. And I could be like, hey, if you're going hunting or skiing next year, you want some bunks? Like you could have them on a pallet, take them to your house whenever it comes with the shipment. And then when you want to change layouts, just move that fridge over and then mount that bunks in. So like you could buy basically essentially 10 campers or 10 layouts with one camper. It's pretty sweet. And that concept took a lot of time to put together, but because of our technology, we have our wiring harness. We wire 6-gauge wire through the walls up to each bench. So like when you click the module in, you're not running wires all over the camper. You just click, boom, right? Everything plugs in place. So it's a really cool system. And it's off-road rated. It's mounted with L-track and an aluminum like hook on the back. So it's isometrically mounted into the camper. It does not move.
Awesome. And I can only imagine the amount of late nights and early mornings that took to bring it into production. That whole concept, which hasn't been done before to my knowledge, or if it has been done, it's been in very limited quantities. Yeah. Are you able to move the camera around and show us some of this system, or is it?
Oh yeah,
because we'd love to check it out.
All right, let's see here. Let's see how good this map camera is.
I know you're in a boot, so
you're good. So like,
nice.
There's one of our modules. You can see like it's what I mean by unitized. Just it's split right here. This is its own module right here. I just pulled the drawer out and did some work on it, and this is a kitchen module. So that has 200 amps of power inverter. That one plugs in and powers the whole camper, the lights and everything. So there's no wires ran up to the roof. It just goes right, in one spot, right?
And that's like the master cable right there?
Yeah, that's the master
for the
cable.
roof.
Yeah, so because with pop-ups, you have to connect the roof to the body and whatnot. But
yes,
runs your solar and everything up to, so we have solar on the roof. We actually put solar on its own highway, or we call it highway, its own wiring harness, so that you don't have to restrict where you put your MPPT, like your MPPT, your solar charger. Yes. And it's really nice because you can see there's no wires run all over the camper. Everything just plugs and play, right? So, but everything's modularized, right? So this has a water tank on it, slide out trash can. We do Male panels and all these things. So no space gets wasted, right? Because sometimes with modular, you could think, oh, if I got to put this in place, it's going to waste the space. But we designed it to where, no, you really don't waste any space and you don't have to do any of your own wiring. And also, this is that wiring harness I was talking about right here. It comes out, I open this right here. So like you have your solar, your DC transfer. This is your inclinometer. So we have an app that comes with the camper and you can measure your camper's like level as you're going down the road. So you can see like, that was a design because I took my wife camping and it was pitch black and it was terrible. There was a bunch of bugs and she was yelling at me like, hey, I want to go to sleep. And I'm like, I can't find a level camping spot. And you know how that goes. It's like we drove backed up, get out to the level, back up. Now it's on CarPlay. You're driving, you're like, level, park, boom, done. Nah, it's great.
And that's an app for your camper specifically?
Yeah, it comes with our camper. Yeah, all the modules have IoT on them too. So like, the water tank you can level, or you can measure the level. You can measure your battery level, your solar intake. It hooks up with Dometic and Red Arc and all of those guys. It's really great. So yeah, it's not just like modular. Everything's connected. And yeah, you want to talk about sleepless nights? It took a year to figure out like how to do that and do it. I have hundreds of iterations, dude, just like testing and blowing up batteries and doing all that fun stuff. So yeah.
So we have a ton of innovation coming out of Peak Performance Campers. We have the leveling app that tells you if you're level, the modularity, the composite panel campers, the integrated wiring harnesses, all of those things by themselves are their own project, and to be able to weave that all together. And just looking at the inside of the camper, in the most highest compliment ever, it looks like you're in a space shuttle in terms of
Yeah.
the professional finish and how everything
Yeah.
clicks in. It's so cool. It really
Yeah.
thinks like it is
Yeah.
like a exploring pod.
Yeah.
And I love that you took so much inspiration from those early space shuttle days. That is just super, super cool.
Yeah.
What a cool concept.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm like blown away by
Yeah.
all the innovation that's taking place with
Sure.
that little footprint.
Mhm.
So I guess looking towards the future, we discussed a little bit about bringing up your production and
Mhm.
potentially exploring partnerships with dealers and just getting the product out there. Is there any other, like, what's on your horizon for kind of the next 6 months to a year in terms of peak performance campers?
That's a great question. So we're going to build more of a fleet. We're going to have some model campers and demo campers and everything. We're going to build a fleet. And we're also building some for customers right now that have taken pre-order. It's not pre-order. They're ready to go. Those are going into production right now. The panels are getting cut and everything. We're about to assemble those. But we're really just trying to get out there this year, right? And show people what we have and get to expos, get to partnerships with local groups. So Calvary Overland in Texas, we're looking to be a title sponsor for them. Really great guys over there. But yeah, we're just really trying to embed ourselves in the community because, to be honest, like all the engineering is great, but my favorite part is showing people or just being with people in this industry, whether it's other manufacturers, whether it's customers, prospects. I don't care. And I don't care if you don't own or buy our product. I just like being around people in this industry and seeing not just like what they have, but their creativity. Because that was also the idea is I built this camper and I'm like, I don't know what's best for you. What's best for you? I'll give you the platform, I'll give you the tools, and guess what? You don't even have to turn a wrench. It's not custom. You get to build out. You have a better idea of a layout than I do, like because you know exactly what works for you. That was the idea behind the modular system. Was you know where you want your cargo nets, you know where you want your Male panels. Put them wherever you want. I'm not that smart. I don't know that stuff about you, so you need to tell me. You need to just figure out where you want it. And I gave them what I call a. My wife says to call it a platform. I call it a playground. Playground for adults to just put all their stuff everywhere in their camper. It's a really great concept.
I love it. That's so cool. I really love it. It's amazing. And if someone's looking to get a camper from you or they're interested, what is, let's just talk. I know price is really hard to talk about, but ballpark price, where do you see your campers? Like what level of the market are they hitting in terms of ballpark price?
Yeah, we're pretty upfront with our pricing. We always are upfront with, because I'm an ultralight backpacker, we're upfront with price and weights right there. The weight and price are always right there with everything we do. So our base slide-in hard side starts at 21,000, and then from there, and that includes your modulock system, the module mounting trays, our utility voids you saw right here that allow you to connect. Because that's the other thing; these pop out as well. So like when you change modules, you can change these so you could. Essentially, if you have a kitchen module, you need a water drain. But if you don't have a kitchen module, you don't need a water drain. So those change as well. So those are included. Your door, like your high quality, like turn door is included. Your mattress, your cushions are included. Your solar gland is included. All the soft side, if you have a soft side camper, that's an extra 1,500. That has an insulated R3 soft side with 4 windows. Hard side is standard. It has 2 large turn windows on each side. You could do a wet bath model on a full-size length camper because you have a full-length camper, which is an extra $1,250, just a little longer than this one. And so we're just upfront with pricing. Like everything is just how much do you need or want? Expand from there. Expand your cost and your weight. So it's a really simple system. We're trying to get our builder more understandable, like our product builder. But to be honest, the best way is just to contact me and my team.
And if people want to reach out, what's the best way for them to contact you or to learn more information besides this awesome podcast?
We actually set up where you can actually just text a number or email us. We gave those 2 opportunities. So you could text us. Do you want me to give the number out or do you want to just post it? Or
Sure.
what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can
text,
link it below too.
Yeah, for sure. Text us at 940-297-5235. Or you can email our team at sales@peakperformancecampers.com. If it's something quick, just text us. We'll answer you real quick. And then if it's like a requirement sheet, we get that sometimes like, I need this, just send it an email. It's a lot easier. and then I'll probably give you a call. If you don't want me to call you, then just tell me. But I feel like if you're looking, you probably want me to call you and whatnot. So yeah, it's just really easy system. Like, we're very available, and we really want your input. That's the whole design behind this camper, is your input. So
I love it, Brandon. Well, we covered a lot of great stuff about peak
mhm,
performance campers. I learned a ton, and I
mhm.
just want to thank you again for making time to chat with me. And I'm really looking forward to the future of peak performance campers, seeing some out in the wild, and getting some
Yeah,
hands on this modularity system. It's such a
for sure.
great concept. Can't wait to watch how 2025 goes for you. And thanks again for making some time to chat this morning.
I really appreciate you for having me on here, man. This is huge. So thank you.
My pleasure. All right, we'll stay in touch. And for more information, just see below the podcast. I'll link to all of Peak Performance's contacts and their website and their Instagram and all that stuff, so you can get a hold of Brandon and maybe look at Peak Performance Campers if that's something that you think would work well for you. So until then, we'll see you later.